Today, I am coming to you to talk about one of the most important topics when it comes to your birth: advocacy. Welcome to Positive Birth Corner. I am Mary Nisi, your host, where we're changing the narrative around birth, one positive birth at a time. And I am so glad you are here. We are doing a solo podcast that I'm so excited about as a doula, but also as a childbirth educator. I love coming to share with you these goodies. So let's start with defining what is advocacy, right? It's simply knowing what you want, communicating it, and making sure that you're part of the decision making. Okay. So let's kind of let me give you an example here. Think about, when you go out to a restaurant, right? When you order, right? You're the one who's ordering the food that you want, the meal that you want, right? You're the one who tells the waiter or the waitress what it is that you want, right, to come to you, right? I'm going to get rice and beans, right? Whatever that might be. So think about it in those lenses. That's what advocacy is. You don't have someone else who says, oh, no, actually, they will have da 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 da, right? You get to choose what it is that you want. Okay. So really advocacy is, using your voice, right? Choosing what it is that you want, communicating that, and being part of that decision making. It's ownership. It's ownership. So, what does this mean, right? What does this mean in your pregnancy? What does this mean in your birth, right? In your journey? I'm going to share with you three simple ways. I created some notes for you. Three simple ways to advocate for yourself. The first one is you actually need to know what you need. You need to know what you need and what you want. This is where it starts. Okay, advocacy is about what you want and what you need. So, as you've been listening to different, stories here on our podcast, even my own personal story, right? It starts with you. We're also very different. And that's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of humanity. That's the beauty of pregnancy journey is that everybody comes in and you get to have your own unique story, right? Because you have your own unique need. You can still take time to think through who you are and what would feel good. What kind of people in your life help you feel safe? I want you to think about just who you are as a person, right? I've had people talk about, I really struggle with anxiety. So I know that there's some things I have to put into place to lessen that anxiety. The first part of advocacy starts with you. You have to tune in. You have to tune in inwards. And unfortunately, we don't always have spaces that allow us to do that. And I have this whole argument that I think pregnancy allows us or invites us to really come to this place where we have to tune in inside and figure out what are your needs? What is it that you need for your upcoming birth? I've been doing this with my clients, with the families that I support, in the prenatal guide series. It's like a workbook that we have in our show notes. I have prompted questions and journal questions and different things to really be thinking about to help you tune in. Okay, so if you need help with that, definitely just go down in the link and check that out. It has to start there. It has to start with you figuring out what it is that you need. And if you don't know everything yet, that's okay, because number two is you've got to be educated. Okay, let's talk about that. Okay, what do I mean by that? You need to take a childbirth class. You need to understand how this process goes. You need to understand what's going on with your body. What does your body do during labor, right? What are the stages? What are the transitions? What is it that you're experiencing? What are contractions? What do they feel like, right? What am I going to do? When do I go to the hospital or to the birthing center? Or when do I call, the provider, right? You need to be able to understand the comprehensive education that we call childbirth. I'm a childbirth educator, and I'm definitely very, very biased about this because I have seen when people have not done childbirth education, how it has affected them. Social media, listen, I have a love-hate relationship with social media. But social media, as much as it's great and I'm grateful for it, it is not your childbirth education. I need you to find who lives locally near you. There's childbirth educators online. For some of you, you're like, I need to be in person. I need to see somebody, right? There is spaces you can do that. For some of you people that are like me, when I was, pregnant, I was working full time. I was in school. There was a lot that was going on. And for me, going somewhere was not happening, right? And that is why I've created my doula guide series, which is a self-paced childbirth education that you are still able to do. So there is options of how you can do a childbirth class. Okay, I teach at the birthing center and we do 4 weeks. People come in 4 times at night, right? And they go through that series. I have some people who do 1 day because they're like, I cannot do 4 times. They do 1 day, right? 1 day, there is really a lot of options out here for childbirth education. And I need you to get you in a class. And I need you to get your support person in there with you, your partner in there with you, the people that are going to be part of this journey, especially those people that are coming into your labor room. You need to all be on the same page. And childbirth education is just so important because it adds to your list of what you need and what you want, right? So I have people who say, well, I want to make sure that I have delayed cord clamping. They might have not known about delayed cord clamping, what it does, what the benefits are, until they went into a class and found out more information and realized, oh, you know what? That's for me. That's something that I want, right? You're going to learn so much. And I love childbirth educators. Of course, I'm one of them. I love childbirth educators because they're really bringing in their experience. They're bringing in so many stories, but they're also giving you evidence-based childbirth education. Okay. So that's the second part. How do you advocate for yourself? Number one, you have to tune in. You have to figure out, what do you need? What do you want, right, for your birthing journey? And number two, you have to be educated. You please do not skip this part. It's so important for you to go and have your positive birth experience, okay? Number three, speak up and pivot when needed, okay? What do I mean by that? Now that you have tuned in, right? Now that you know what it is that you want for yourself, right? Now that you then have been educated, you understand the different things. The next part is you then have to speak up. One of my mamas, who I'm hoping will come on here and share her story, I met her in prenatal. I remember going to her house, and this was the first time that I ever had oat milk from scratch. She literally made me oat milk, and I was like, oh, this is like really deep, right? But this was just like, this was very normal to her. She's an herbalist, right? Like, really loves the natural ways of life, and that's just how she lives, right? When we did this process where we were tuning in, and then, went to childbirth education, it came to a place where it was time for her to speak up. Now, she was going to her prenatal appointments to a local hospital that she had known her whole life. Her family had gone there. She knew the staff there. This was like the place. So when she got pregnant, what did she do? She went there, right? Which makes sense. But when we did this, this process of tuning in and education, right? She then started asking questions that were aligning with what she wanted, right? She wanted more natural ways of labor, right? Am I going to be able to move around? I do not want to be hooked up. What does this mean, right? This was her speaking up. She wanted an unmedicated birth. So she asked, am I going to be, I want an unmedicated birth. How are you going to be able to support this with me? And this was part of her journey. And as she went to appointments, as she asked, she realized that as much as she loved this place that she had known her whole life, it was not going to align with the birth that she wanted, right? So as her doula, we started looking about options, right? Getting to know who she was, right? And how she lived. Because again, who are you bringing to labor room? Yourself, right? You don't change, it's you. But with who she was, I mean, she still is, I suggested looking into a birthing center. This support the birth that she was looking for, okay? And so she went, she did her consultation with the birthing center and loved it. And so what did she do? She spoke up, right? Because the third one is you speak up and you pivot when needed. And that's just one of my favorite stories, honestly, because she literally spoke up, asked the questions at the place that she really loved, and pivoted so that she can have what she wanted. When we talk about advocacy, you tune in, you get educated, and you speak up, right? You ask your questions, you ask your providers, you ask your support people, right? Even the folks that you think are going to be in labor room with you, you want to make sure that is a good fit. That is part of you speaking up, being part of the decision making for your birth. And of course, lastly, you are speaking up and you are pivoting. If there is like one thing that I always like will say is people struggle to pivot. People struggle to pivot. I need you to be comfortable with pivoting because life goes so differently, and it's okay to change things. It's okay to switch. I would say switch providers if need be. If you haven't listened to my story yet, it is the second episode. Go listen to that journey and hear what that looked like for me. I switched hospitals, right? I switched from one hospital to the other, and then I switched providers, which like I had midwives, and I'm like, nope, I'm gonna go to this other midwife because this one aligned better with my journey. Okay. So I don't want you to hesitate in pivoting because that is part of advocacy. This is a short and sweet episode just for you. If you love this short and sweet solo where I'm giving you education, giving you tools, let me know. And I want to mention this part as we're ending because I think it's important to realize that if you're going to a place and you feel like it takes you out of your character and you have to be extremely confrontational, that is not a space for you. Okay? If you listen to Maura's story, who was that first interview, which is the third episode, listen to her story. Oh my God, it's amazing, right? For her, it was that she went to a provider, right, and had to pivot. So she switched. When she switched, her provider was incredible, would provide space for her, would say, what questions do you have for me today? And then would ask her partner, hey, what questions do you have for me, right? She talked about how he made her feel like she was the only person that day, right, that he was caring for. Okay, it feels good when you are at the place that you need to be with the right birth team. It feels good, right? And it doesn't have to be messy. It doesn't have to be confrontational, right? And there are times, right, as a doula, like I've been in that space where things have had to get a little bit heated because I'm gonna confront, I'm gonna make sure that like the family, the mama that I'm supporting is well. But that is not the ideal space you want to be, especially in the labor room. I do not want to go back and forth with you because we did not do this work ahead of time, right? Now, are things going to happen? Absolutely. And that's part of life. But the work that you can do now with this advocacy is that you want to be able to make these decisions ahead of time so they feel good. And my favorite part about this space here is that you get to hear the stories of so many birth stories that felt good. And that is the goal. Okay. So go and tune in. I want you to do those journals. I want you to have those prompt questions to figure out what it is that you really need, what it is that you want. I want you to dream, right? I want you to really allow yourself to dream about what you want your birth to look like. And then I want you to go get some childbirth education. Okay. I want you to get comprehensive, evidence based childbirth education, not just for you, for your team, for your support person, for your partner. And guess what? The last one is speak up, and pivot if you need to. Thank you so much for being here. We will be back for next episode. Share this with someone else who needs it, and let me know that you love the solo episodes where you're getting some education, baby. I am so grateful, and I will see you next time.